What's up, everyone? Good afternoon. It is a good afternoon. Greetings. Good to see everyone. Tell me where you're from. There we go. Don't forget to like it as you're watching here, as you're sitting there waiting to get to start here. I'm going to tell you right up front, I'm going to run a couple specials like I do on most of my live streams. So I'm looking up here. I'm running the only special I've ever done on my Modes of the Major Scale course, 25% off for the next 24 hours. There's a coupon code MM251. So go to my rickbeato.com, and that's my 8-video, 2-hour series along with PDFs, Mastering Modes of the Major Scale. Also the Beato book, $10 off, and my Mega Bundle, $10 off for the next 24 hours. Anyways, a lot of new people here. Who's new? Who's a new person that I don't know that just found out about my... you can find the Beato book on my website, www.rickbeato.com. Who's new to here? There we go. I want to see all the newbies. You're old. I'm old too. Welcome, everyone. What is the Beato book? The Beato book is my 300 plus page book on music theory, improvisation, and it's kind of the basis of a lot of the theory discussions that we have on here. It puts together things that you wouldn't know the terms of, things like Lydian triads, for example, which would be a 1 sharp 4 5, or all the different terminology and all the basic information that you need to know, so that I don't need to go over it on here, because I just move on as if there's assumed knowledge with people, and thousands of people have bought my book, and they know the things that I'm talking about, people on here, and you're very welcome. I see that. Thank you for my channel. Thank you guys for being part of my channel here. So there's a big, this has been an interesting few days with my video on UMG, Universal Music Group, and then Adam Neely, he did his video on my video because he has the same issues as I do. So I think it's, I think that we all us YouTubers kind of go through this, but it's something that we don't necessarily talk about. I have talked with Adam about this in the past, but you know, I've had things blocked that I've worked a lot of time on it. I actually would rather have them block it when I first upload it than when it's up there, like this other video that had 17,000 views on it already, and then they blocked. Well, they first blocked in Germany and Austria, and then they eventually blocked the whole thing once they figured out what was going on with it. But really, what this is getting down to is the future. No, it was blocked, Jesse. It was taken down, removed, as they like to say. So. One of the things that you know, there were a lot of ideas on there, and there's a lot of really interesting suggestions from people on my video and on Adam's video. So there's no really way to appeal. I mean, Adam had said in his video that he's appealed to them. I'm going to talk to Adam tomorrow. I'm actually going to see Adam. I'm coming up to New York to do 3 seminars that I haven't announced yet. I was going to wait till Monday to announce it, but I just accidentally let it slip. So I'm going to do 3 seminars on November 7th, and the 3rd seminar is with my friend Aiden Essen, who's happens to be in the States, and we're going to do it together. but I'm doing 3 different seminars. I'll talk more about this on Monday. But yeah, so Adam said, I just see somebody here said that Adam had appealed, but they were rejected. But I have an idea about what to do about it, and I'm going to talk with Adam about it tomorrow. So I don't want to talk about it on here yet, but part of my New York trip will be involved with that, trying to figure out the what can be done about this, because it's outrageous, honestly. So the idea that you cannot play music, this whole fair use thing has nothing to do with it. I mean, essentially what goes on here is that they subcontract people out there, companies that will go and search for content. And when they find stuff, they get paid for finding things. I know people that have companies that look for copyright infringement on YouTube. I mean, I know people that used to be A&R people in the music business, and then they did this, as another job outside the music business because they couldn't make any money in working for a record label anymore. So copyright infringement. This is a lot of companies sprang up about probably 5 years ago or so that you can do it automatically, but they still have to do the program. They still have to write the programs for it. And they still need people to work at the companies to go in and interface with the people at the labels to convince them to use your company. So you actually do need human beings for these things, because you have to convince the people to hire you for it. So, and that actually takes personal relationships. So that's one of the things that you can't, with all the artificial intelligence and all that stuff, there are still human beings making decisions on what they want to spend and who are the people that they want to go with in order to do this. So obviously they can write an algorithm that will say, and I said it in my video, that, okay, the tune was not played from the beginning. It was played in the middle, and only a small percentage of the tune was played. And then it could cross-reference with, what kind of channel is this? This is a music education channel. This is really, really easy to do. Even though the bots did get things wrong, like they miscredited Olio, which was from Relaxin' with the Miles Davis Quintet. John Coltrane was actually playing the solo. I went from Miles's solo into John Coltrane's solo. They must have an algorithm for John Coltrane's sound, but his estate is very aggressive in going after YouTube people. And this is something that has come out of the last probably, I'd say, 10 years or so. If you think about this, historically, people would make money through generations of people would make money. Families of musicians that were no longer here, that would, the rights of their music would go to their wives, to their kids, whoever. And people would make a living off this for generations. For example, Marvin Gaye's family has made money off his music for years, and substantial amounts of money until streaming. So when the streaming came on, and companies like Spotify wouldn't pay anything before 1972, they'd pay no royalties on that. Okay, so you started to have people that were used to having money come in for a generation or more, money coming in consistently for their relatives, whoever it might be, for their catalog. And those things would dwindle, okay? I'll give you a reference point on this. So as a producer, starting in the 80s, probably late 70s, producers started getting production points for records. A typical production fee would be 3 points. That means 3 percentage points out of the artist's royalty. For years and years, the typical artist royalty with a new artist would be 13% of the, I'm not sure how they would calculate it, but because it would never ever be accurate anyways, but let's say 30% of gross. All right, I'm sorry, 13% of gross. Out of that 13%, they take the producer royalty from the artist. So if the artist was getting 13%, it'd be knocked down to 10%. The producer gets 3 points. Typically, on a record through the 90s, through the early 2000s till about 2005 or so, this could mean a lot of money. Even to this day, it can mean money, mean good money. A typical record would, and I've talked about this before, but a typical record that would sell 1 million copies would produce about 300 some odd thousand, maybe up to $330,000 per million records. Okay, so to become a millionaire as a producer, you'd have to have a record sell about 3 million records. So whoever produced it, if Rick Rubin produced a record, if Jay-Z produced a record, the first 3 million, it would take 3 million to make $1 million in producer royalties, okay? So until but they wouldn't get paid any money until all the recording costs were recouped. Now, the recording costs, usually an artist, depending on how many records they had done, each record would be increased by, let's say, $50,000 or $100,000 per record. So let's say you signed your deal for $250,000. This is back in the 90s. This really was still about 2005. But when I started producing in 95, so a new band would have a record and they would have, let's say, a $250,000 budget for a new band. So the producer would then get paid if it was, no matter how many songs they recorded. You would typically record more songs that you'd need because on CDs you would have bonus tracks and things like that. So a typical producer would get $3,000 per track. So if it's a 10-song record, they'd get $30,000 in recoupable money. So out of that recoupable money, the producer would get recouped from the artist, from their 13 points, the producer would get their 3 points, and the label would just keep making money. So, hold on, let me block this guy here. So, until those initial advance, and that initial advance was recouped, the producer wouldn't get any money. So once that 30 grand was recouped, now that producer might have $100,000 in escrow and waiting for them to get that money when the record recoups. Now the band has this thing called cross-collateralization. So if you were a new band and let's say you had a $250,000 budget, but your record only recouped $200,000 out of your 10 points that you had, and you had a $50,000 balance, that balance would be moved to your next record. And your next record, let's say, had a $350,000 budget. And let's say that you only made $300,000 on that, and they signed you for a third record. Well, then you have $100,000 starting off that are unrecouped, that's the cross-collateralization that would get added to your bill. Now, the producers don't have to stand behind that. When I produce a record for a major label, I don't have to stand behind the band's money. Most bands make no money ever from a record label, okay? This is why this whole streaming thing, this is why the streaming thing really killed the industry, because the labels were so used to making so much money, especially when they were making CDs. Because with the CDs, you couldn't really steal them because there was no file sharing. They would pay $18. That was a typical CD price back in the early 90s when grunge happened, all the way through the 90s until Napster. So out of that, you'd have maybe 2 good songs. In the mid-90s, companies in the United States that sold records, Blockbuster, Virgin Records, things like that, would have listening stations where people could actually go and listen to the record. That was a thing that they did. So they would give the record stores burner CDs that they would take that they could actually put in to listening stations, and you used to have headphones that you put on listening stations. You could go through the tracks. And so you know what you were buying. But this didn't really happen until about 95, 96. So, and records sold ridiculous amounts up until the year 2000. 2000 was the height of the music industry. Billions of dollars in profit in 2000. What is a label? Jive, that had the Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, and Britney Spears, I think, made $1 billion in profit. One label made $1 billion in profit in 1 year, in 2000. That was the height of record sales in 2000. Height of record sales forever in the music business then. And then it was a decline because of Napster. Because people got fed up. College kids didn't have the money to buy them, and they got fed up, and they started file sharing. And a lot of people don't remember this because now it's 17, 18 years ago. When the file sharing started, they tried to scare people. Lars from Metallica came out. A lot of artists came out at the time and talked about they were going to go after people. They actually arrested some, or heavily fined people that were known abusers of this, people that were giving out music there were people that would have huge amounts of data that they were passing on through peer-to-peer sites, through Napster and through there was other things other than Napster. So the label's first instinct was to, okay, well, what are we going to do about these MP3 things? They didn't think that this was going to be a thing. I don't know how. So Steve Jobs, being a smart guy, went in and had a meeting, and he met with all these labels, and he convinced them, because he was a charming guy, and he convinced them to he was going to set up the store, which originally was going to get set up by a friend of mine who got approached about the iPod before Apple decided to, before he approached Apple. I have a friend that got approached that was the CEO of a company that pitched it to his company, and they decided not to go to it. So there was a different company that was going to get the iPod. I'm going to try and get him on my show. That was going to get the iPod. He has all the original drawings for it and everything, and they were going to set up the store. It wasn't going to be Apple. Okay, so he had this meeting, and he convinced them to give him to lock in the price at 99 cents a song, $10 for a record, and give Apple 30 cents a record for hosting it. And for some reason, they went with this. Okay, now this is, if you think about it, like I said in my video, you're basically giving away 30% of your profit. People complain when you have to pay PayPal 3% for PayPal. It's outrageous. But what industry gives away 30% of their profits? Okay, so then in 2005, I saw it in my business. I was doing major label records all the time. There was a lot of bands that would get signed for 2 record deals. If you were at a bidding war back in the 90s or the 2000s, you would get 2 guaranteed records. No matter what, doesn't matter what genre of music, country records, rock, hip hop, it doesn't matter. Some people that would have hit songs back then that would get on the radio. In certain markets, there were certain PDs, program directors, that would play artists. Like here, there was a friend of mine named Leslie Fram. She's now she works at CMT. She's the head of programming at CMT. And Leslie had ran a radio station here called 99X here in Atlanta, and it was the alternative station. She played people before they got signed, and they got signed because they got played on her station. Okay, that literally one person one PD in an influential station like K-Rock in LA or here at 99X, there were certain stations that were bellwethers that would, if they played an artist, they would become huge, and there would be a massive bidding war, and the artist would get signed for either a 2 or even 3 record deal. And they would be negotiated. And these deals would be for millions of dollars. I had a bidding war band that got signed. I signed one band to a production deal ever in my career. I don't believe in production deals. And this band happened to get in a bidding war, and it was a multi-million-dollar deal for them. And they were amazing. They did this. They were called I-9. They did the closing credits song on Cameron Crowe's movie Elizabethtown. And Cameron Crowe approached me before the band had even signed their deal, when they had 7 labels that were interested in signing them. So Cameron approached me and said, Rick, it's Cameron Crowe. And I was a huge fan of his movies. For those of you that know, I don't know how many of you know Cameron Crowe. He's a famous director. So Cameron called me out of the blue. I was sitting at I was making a record in LA, and I was sitting at Bob's Big Boy, and I get a call and say, Rick, it's Cameron Crowe. And like, how many Cameron Crowes are there? He said, I got this I-9 live board tape. This is from a live board tape. This band got signed from a live Battle of the Bands, literally a board tape. They got a multi-million-dollar record deal. He says, I want Vanilla Sky. There you go. That's one of his. Jerry Maguire, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Singles, which is a great rock, movie that Cameron did. So he said, I'm doing this movie Elizabethtown. I want I-9 to do the closing credits song. And then, so the band ended up signing with RCA Records, and it was a disaster from there. They were an incredibly creative band. They had great songs. The band was only cello, acoustic guitar, bass, and a female singer. Her name's Carmen Keegans. And Almost Famous is another one. So Carmen, the singer, is one of the greatest singers I've ever worked with. She was unbelievable. She still is unbelievable. So Carmen and Cameron, he was totally blown away by her voice. He actually sent her. Carmen lived here in my house before my wife and I got married. Well, my wife and I were dating, but Carmen lived in my upstairs here with her boyfriend. And Cameron sent the records, FedEx the records that his sister gave him, because Almost Famous is about this. He sent them here for Carmen to listen to. So I got these Cameron Crowe records sent to my house, and Carmen would listen to them in the upstairs. It was unbelievable. So Uncle Rick, it was more like it was Carmen's dad, but yeah. So Cameron had the band do the closing credits song. And then once the band got signed, it was a disaster. Clive Davis signed them, and it was the nightmare story that you can only imagine. Every bad thing that you ever heard about the music business happened to this band. And they made him work with other people. They wouldn't let the band play on the record. They tried to break the band up. They had him do these horrible co-writes with people. And it was a disaster. Had we actually released the demos that we did that were just live acoustic, the band would have been huge. They'd still be together and everyone would know them. I believe that Carmen would have been like Adele, because this is before Adele. And her voice is unbelievable. So, anyways, that was the time, that bidding war that they had was really the last time that things like that really happened on a regular level. You'd have bidding wars. My band was a bidding war band that I was in the late 90s. We didn't get a deal like that or anything, but a bidding war is essentially when you have more than one label that are offering you a record deal. Now, this band, I-9, had 6 or 7 offers. I mean, massive, from Columbia Records to RCA Records to Atlantic Records, you name it, Warner Brothers, all of them. They got flown around everywhere. So this was really, really an amazing thing. Anyways, back then, if you were, let's say in the 90s, Brendan O'Brien, who's a huge producer. How many of you know Brendan O'Brien? The cello player is the cello player for Chris Cornell, was the cello player for Chris Cornell. The cello player from I-9 went on he did the last 3 years of Chris Cornell's life. Brian did duos with Chris Cornell all over the world. So this kind of gives you an idea. And Brian's been on my channel. I did an episode with Brian on my channel. So in the 90s, somebody like Brendan O'Brien, who's from Atlanta, would He did Stone Temple Pilots, Pearl Jam, all their records but their first. Rage Against the Machine, all their records but their first. He mixed Super Unknown. He did Train, Drops of Jupiter. He did the Black Crowes' first 2 records. He engineered and mixed. He produced and engineered, mixed all the Stone Temple Pilots records, all that stuff. Phenomenal. One of the greatest producers and engineers. I mean, just really super gifted guy. Brendan sold, every record he did sold multiple millions. I mean, if you think about Pearl Jam Versus, probably 12 million worldwide. And then he did the Stone Temple Pilots records. They all sold 5, 10, 15 million worldwide, So each of those millions is worth $300,000. So you can just imagine how much money Brendan was making. I mean, I don't know, but multiple millions of dollars, just like Rick Rubin, people like that. This is how much producers used to make. Okay, this is when people were selling these massive amounts of money. Then streaming comes along. Well, it really virtually became impossible to become a millionaire as a producer and I don't mean to throw around millionaire. I'm not a millionaire. I don't want people think I'm rich or something. I am not rich. Believe me, I'm not. I have a nice room here, but that's it. So these people were, millionaires. Like Rick Rubin drove a Rolls Royce around, probably still does. Okay, so I don't have millions in gear. It looks like I do, but I don't have millions in gear. Not even close. Not even a hundredth of that. So, anyways. A record then, so saying that a million selling record would bring in $300,000. To put it in perspective, last year, I believe there was probably was it last year? 3 records, I want to say Drake and Taylor Swift and Adele or something, were the only 3 people. There were only a few, maybe there was 5 platinum records all last year. Platinum, million selling records. That's it. So out of that, what started happening is that the producers started asking for more money up front because there was no back-end money anymore. So somebody like Brendan O'Brien, I'm not saying Brendan, I don't know this for a fact, but a producer like Brendan O'Brien, starting in the mid-2000s, would start asking, instead of, I would get $3,000 per track. So would every Joe producer out there. But the big-name people would get $100,000 advance. And maybe not all of it was recoupable. Maybe only 50 grand of it was recoupable. They had so much power because they had these massively, massively big bands. So they started negotiating bigger upfront advances, which not all of them were recoupable. So then you had people that were superstar writer producers, Max Martin being one of them. Now those people would get huge amounts of money. Pharrell, people like that would produce a track and write the tracks for the bands. They would get $100,000 per song. Not per record, per song. And they would get 3 or 4 points. So one of the things I didn't mention, in the 80s, it became customary because one producer manager asked for their mixing engineer to get for their mixing engineer to get 1 percentage point for mixing a record. So that became the typical amount of money you would make on a record. And people that were big mixers would make massive amounts of money because records would sell so much. So somebody like Andy Wallace, who was a huge mixer, mixed Nirvana Nevermind, he mixed the Rage Against the Machine first 2 records, Helmet, all these big rock records, but he worked with Sheryl Crow, he did Jeff Buckley, all this stuff. Phenomenal mixer. Andy Wallace had probably 150 million records sold. And his 1 point, he didn't just get 1 point. He got money to mix the record. Let's say he probably started out in the early 90s making $100,000 per record and then would raise his price. I mean, these were massive amounts of money. So you can imagine how much money it took to run the music business. Now, all of that extra money that they made with the $18 CDs, that money from the 4% of bands that would make money on a label, that money would finance all the rest of the bands, all the jazz groups. You saw, if those of you that watch how many people watch my video about all the people that Universal Music Group, all the labels they own? Because it's unbelievable. How many people saw that? There's probably 200 labels that they own, Universal. I mean, everything from Blue Note to ECM Records. I didn't realize they owned so many until I went to their website. It's incredible. They own the whole music business. And this is a tangent, but I do tangents. This all started in 1996 with the Telecommunications Act of 1996 that Bill Clinton signed in. Now, I always say people complain about NAFTA. Some people do. But really, that created all the all those huge conglomerates that controlled all the media. Okay, it went from 80 some odd companies that controlled 90% of the media to 6. Being Vivendi is the company that owns Universal Music Group. And somebody said this on one of my streams, I think maybe on Facebook, that Vivendi is a French company that started as a sewer company, which is pretty appropriate. So, anyways, that's something that people don't even realize. That Telecommunications Act was what created all these huge monopolies in that these 6 companies control all the media. I'm talking all the TV, all the films, everything you read, print media, everything except things like YouTube, things like Facebook. Okay? Anyways, so Vivendi owns Universal Music Group. So what they did then is they went around and bought up all these labels. And they bought these labels, I assume, because there was no money except in the catalog. There was no money to be made. These labels weren't worth anything. Somebody complained, why are you talking about Tom Petty? Well, I happen to love Tom Petty. He's one of the greatest songwriters of all time. And if it wasn't for Tom Petty, none of the people that were on, I mean, it could be anybody that was on, he was on Warner Brothers, I believe. I think Tom Petty was on Warner Brothers. But, it doesn't matter. All the huge acts funded all the jazz labels like Blue Note, everything that was under these things. Or let's say Atlantic Records, if you were Led Zeppelin, okay, and you were funding. Now, Led Zeppelin didn't fund because John Coltrane wasn't alive, but Atlantic Records would fund any of the Atlantic artists. The money that they made on their records would go to fund the jazz department of those. And they'd fund the classical department. So these 4% of the successful bands or artists on any label would fund the entire community of artists. So they'd use this money to make jazz records, make classical records, make indie rock records with cool indie bands that never would have gotten signed. Okay? So, and somebody's like, this is also discouraging. It's not discouraging at all. None of this is discouraging. This is actually encouraging because knowledge is power, ultimately. Understanding this is extremely, extremely important. Now, there are ways to get past Universal. There are people that work for Universal. I know someone that used to work for Columbia Records that's the second highest person in, I realize this, that I know this person who I met a number of times back 15 years ago. I have a friend that's good friends with this person. And this person is one of the highest people at Universal Music Group. Okay? So, those are people that can actually make decisions on this and make things change. There's also legislation that can make things change like that. But, so Salvatore said, Pat Metheny's records were also on Geffen. Okay, exactly. There's a great point. Pat Metheny moved to Geffen Records after First Circle or so. I want to say 1985. He moved to DGC. I don't know if he called it he called it Geffen then. Geffen Records, okay, so he moved in the 80s. Well, David Geffen then, he started calling his label DGC in the early 90s. And he had, Gary Gersh was the head of A&R there. Gary signed Nirvana. He signed Counting Crows. He signed the Posies. He signed Sonic Youth. He signed all these massively big bands, or not necessarily massively big bands, but Nirvana was a massively big band. Gary Gersh signed all these people to DGC, David Geffen Company. Well, that's the same label that Pat Metheny was on. They were label mates. You wouldn't think of it because Pat's records would say Metheny Group Productions, but it would say Geffen Records at the bottom. It's the same. It was the same company though. David Geffen, who was a manager in the 70s, who managed Joni Mitchell, was Joni Mitchell's roommate. And who else did he manage? I think he managed the Eagles. I can't even remember. But David Geffen then became this mogul who eventually sold Geffen Records in the 90s for $3 billion. I mean, he got out really at the right time. It's unbelievable. So this... like my video here, I see 226 thumbs up there because it helps YouTube will push my video out to more people afterwards. This chat, the more people like it, the more it actually goes out to people. People don't think about this, that if you actually comment on the videos, it helps the YouTube algorithm push the videos out so that other people will watch them. Otherwise, it doesn't push my videos out. And all the comments that you write in here, I love. But when it's done, it pretty much starts over from scratch. Oh, and I have a 25% off my mastering modes in the major scale for one day only. This is the only time I've ever had it on sale. The coupon code is MM251. So if you go to my rickbeato.com, it's my 8-part series with PDFs about mastering modes of the major scales for film scoring, people like that. It's great. Beato books on sale for one day, $10 off, and the mega bundle I have is $10 off for today till tomorrow at this time. Anyway, so Vivendi went around. They bought. I see all these people saying their stock is down. They own all these companies, and the only thing that's really worth it is the catalogs of these labels. They're it's not like Blue Note is out making new records. They are making new records. They have a record label, but they rely on the catalog to make a living. Well, these catalogs stop making money because of digital, because of things like Spotify. There's just no back end money anymore in this stuff. The labels couldn't figure out anything to do, and then they invested in Spotify, which has now been bought by Google. But a few years back, 3 labels invested in Spotify and owned a small percentage of it. So they started making money again with streaming. They figured out a way. The artists still never made any money with streaming. You hear all these stories about people getting paid, that had 100 million views and they made $1,000, $1,500 from BMI or ASCAP. That's true. I know because, like I said, I've had it a song with 37 million plays in a quarter, and it made $325. That was it. That was the money that I made on it. Somebody says, "What are my thoughts on the career of Max Martin, and how could it be so long?" So it's interesting. Max had a lot of hits in the late 90s with people like Britney Spears, late 90s, early 2000s, right up to 2004. Since You've Been Gone, he did. And then had a real dry spell up until around 2011, and then got back in it, had a tremendous amount of other hits after that. So what I think happened with him is that he started working with younger people that he would co-write with, or he would do what Hans Zimmer does. He would hire people, writers essentially, to work with him that would come up with beats, come up with music beds, things that he could write melodies, because that's the thing, he's a great melody writer. And he would do, I'm guessing this. Somebody says, am I sure? I know that he wrote with a lot of other Swedish, like Shellback, there you go. Because a lot of his tunes are co-writes. They are. They're co-writes with different people. There's an article from a few years ago, 2-3 years ago, about how there's about 5 people out there that write everything that's on the radio, and they talk about each one. They kind of highlighted all of them. So I have a couple of Max Martin tracks that are his wordless vocals that he would do. So he would have A list, B list, and C list songs that he would write. He had a great incredible ear for melody. So he would scat, lyrics, but not real lyrics and melodies and things over these music beds that he'd produce. And then when he'd find an artist do a song, he would write the lyrics for them. For their, whether it was a female artist or a male artist. And he's incredibly gifted as a melody writer and a lyric writer. I mean, incredibly gifted for somebody to write really catchy lyrics and melodies. Anyway, so this is, he's one of the few people that's made tremendous amounts of money, hundreds of millions of dollars from publishing. There is really, it's very difficult. People are always asking me, how do you make a living in the music business as a producer? And I was talking to somebody yesterday, actually, a college student that had asked me this question. And you have to be incredibly good on multiple instruments. You have to be a great writer. You have to know how to mix. I mean, if you want to really be successful in the music business nowadays, and I'm not talking about jazz or anything, I'm talking in pop music, hip hop, anything like that, you have to do things, multiple things well. You don't necessarily have to be a mixer, but you have to be able to be a person that a label can just go to, that has finished tracks, backing tracks, or music beds, whatever you want to call them, because they call people track guys. When I was writing up in Nashville, after I had my song with this band Parmalee, I went up there for a few months and wrote. And people called me a track guy. That's what they called people like me that could actually play all the instruments on a track and bring it up there. So I would go up for a songwriting session, and I'd have 5 music beds, and it would be obvious where the chorus was, and I would play banjo on, I'd play mandolin and program drums and have bass and all this stuff. And they said, I didn't know the people, so I'd get set and put in these songwriting trios. It'd be with 2 other writers, and you go in the room and, you're a track guy. I just got known as a track guy. That's how I got introduced. So do you have anything? So I would play them. I'd bring up my Pro Tools rig on my laptop and I'd play them. What do you think about this? And they'd listen to it. Oh, that's cool. I've got another one. What do you think about this? And they'd be different tempos. They'd be different vibes for tunes. And they'd hit on something. Oh, I think I have a great chorus line for that. And the people, these guys are pro writers. They'd be all people with platinum records. I mean, with not platinum records, #1 songs, multiple #1 songs. So they would say, I got a chorus for that. I think I have a good hook for that. And they would have just list of lyric titles. Okay. So, and I'm not a lyricist. No, I'm not a lyricist. I know as a producer, bad lyrics that need to get fixed, and I can help with lyrics, but I'm not a lyric guy, and I don't particularly believe, even though I have many songs and records as a co-writer, I don't believe in signing bands that can't write their own songs, which is part of the reason that the music business is where it's at now. It became fashionable, and as a protective measure for A&R guys in the late 90s to start signing acts and then sending the producers and co-writers to write all their music for them. So plenty of bands, I like Rush lyrics. Whoever said lyrics don't matter. I love Neil Peart lyrics. Lyrics matter. Come on. I named my son Dylan. I named my daughter Lennon. So there you go. Milli Vanilli, okay. I got to give it to you with that. Anyway, so nowadays, songs are so sophisticated, but yet so simple that Rammstein, love them. Songs are so sophisticated, yet so simple, you have to be able to write a hook every 7 seconds or so. I mean, you have to have an intro, what I would call a, what is the term people call it? a signature. That's what we used to call it back when I first started writing. So you'd have to have a signature in the intro, something that signaled, that was a hook line at the beginning of the song that would tell you that the song's coming. You know, people like Tom Petty would do things where he just play the chords. You know, if you think about it, Free Falling, you know, a lot of them were just chord riffs. You know, but if you think about songs like Stairway to Heaven has an actual hook line in it, or what is the tune? Pink Floyd. I mean, that is a hook right there. That is a great hook. So that's a signature. So you'd write that. So nowadays it's like you got to write a hook line. You got to write a verse with a B. Sometimes the verses will have a B section. Then they'll have a pre-chorus. Then they have a chorus. And then they have a post-chorus. So that became too sophisticated for young kids to shine on you, Crazy Diamond. Thank you. That became too sophisticated to the A&R people. I think it's all BS. It's totally not true. The A&R people thought it was too sophisticated for kids to write, so they would strictly hire producers like myself to come in, write the songs with the band or for the band, and then, which I wouldn't do. I would never write the lyrics. If I got hired to do it and I accepted a project, I would co-write with the bands, and that's it. They would have to write their own lyrics. I would help them with their lyrics, but I'm not going to write lyrics for someone to sing. It's outrageous. Why are they signing them if they can't write their own lyrics? That's just ridiculous. So what's A&R? Artist and repertoire. They're people that sign artists to labels, and they make their records. If you're on, if you're on one of these universal music groups like Republic Records, for example. Republic Records is run by Monty Lipman and Avery Lipman, two brothers. Avery used to run Universal Music. They are the heads of the label, and I think they're acting heads of A&R. So they would be the people that would sign off typically on a particular artist, on the songs that are even going to get made from the record. They'd sign off on what people would get signed, and they get sign off on all the songs that get chosen for the record. If you ever, are mad about what gets played on the radio, don't blame radio stations, don't blame YouTube, it's the record labels. Now, you do have people that are production company people that will sign artists and make their own records. That happens all the time too. It happens more in rap and hip hop. Well, it actually happens in everything now. So these people that are heads of A&R, there's a guy named Pete Gambarg. He's the head of A&R at Atlantic Records, for example. He was the head of A&R and the A&R guy for a band I worked with called Need to Breathe. I just went to see Need to Breathe a few days ago. They played in Atlanta. So Pete was their A&R person. So when I was doing a record for them, every song the band, every demo the band had would have to go through him. He would sign off on it. The mixer, he'd have to sign off on it. So we actually had a huge mixer, one of my favorite mixers, mixed the whole record. He didn't like it. And he had another mixer, who's actually another one of my favorite mixers, remix the entire record. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars here for this. And the first record got mastered even. It went through and got mastered and mixed by literally one of my favorite mixers. And I loved that version. I loved both versions of the record, actually. But anyway, so Pete was the guy that decided all these things. And then he had a boss, Craig Kellman, that runs Atlantic Records. That's his boss. And he would have to ultimately sign up. But the head of A&R he would oversee all the A&R people. Now most of the A&R people are gone because there's no money in it. And there's usually just a head of A&R for the most part. Anyway, so this is really the music business is incredibly complex. And the amount of money in it has been dwindling and dwindling and dwindling. So this is one of the reasons that they have people out there with these bots going and finding things like when I play 30 seconds of a Keith Jarrett tune that no one's going to buy. And Keith Jarrett should be outraged by this. He really should, because no one is going to know his music. He doesn't realize this. In People already don't know his music. It's unbelievable. Pat Metheny, same thing. They don't know these people's music. Young kids, they don't care about them. They're old. They're old, and they don't think about their legacy. They just think, yeah, exactly. Who are these people? They're dinosaurs. Honest, cash me outside. That's the answer to everything. People don't know the Beatles. They don't. They don't know the Beatles anymore. Who is ECM or EMI owned by? Universal Music Group. They own the Beatles. They own everybody. And, but these artists could do something about it. The reason that my video got blocked in Germany and Austria first, I believe, is because ECM Records is based out of there, the label that Keith Jarrett is on. And there was a Jarrett track on there. And the guy that runs the label, Manfred Eicher, who's run it since the late 60s or early 70s, and Keith Jarrett's been on it, Pat Metheny, he signed Pat Metheny in Bright Size Life 1975. Visionary guy. Signed all these huge, huge artists. But he's an old guy now. He doesn't realize that this is killing them. You have someone like me that has a big following. I've got a lot of people on here. I've only got 381 thumbs up here with 583 people on here. What's up, everybody? Come on. Give me some thumbs up here. Anyways, I'm just joking. No, actually, I'm not joking. It helps push my video out. So please do it. And please share my videos on Reddit when you can. Short ones that people would like, because that actually helps. Reddit actually drives YouTube. People don't realize that, but Reddit is the main driver of YouTube. Anything that gets shared, and we are the music makers. If you think I have a good video there, share it there. Or, there's a jazz one or our videos or something. Share it there and comment on it and talk about it, because it's incredibly helpful to my channel and gets the word out. Same thing with Adam Neely. It helps him out with his videos. Those are places. Reddit is where people go to find things on YouTube. People don't realize that. So, and I'm giving you, this is really deep background in the music business here. You want to know about the music business? This is it right here. This rant here, if this is a rant, is this really a rant? This is more like the music business 101. So Pat Metheny, Keith Jarrett, people like that, the Beatles, but really, let's just stick with ECM Records. Manfred Eicher, that owns ECM Records, doesn't realize that those hundredths of a penny that Keith Jarrett is making off one spin, one play on the thing. And there's other versions of All the Things You Are. I think there were 7 versions that didn't get taken down that are already up on YouTube. Everything that I got dinged for, and Adam got dinged for in his video when he talked about his Rockstar Rite of Spring video, all these things that he got dinged for, these songs are already up on YouTube in their entirety with other people. So, it's more like, it's not a rant 101, it's more like advanced. Okay, that's good. So, okay, where's my train of thought? Okay, so these people are still stuck in this old model. A lot of the old people, the ECM people are stuck in this old model. They don't realize, Manfred Eicher, who owns ECM Records, has the say in it. He can say, listen, don't let any of the copyright infringement things go. I don't want you to touch any of those, okay? Gamers do it. When you look at Dan TDM or Stampy or iBallistic Squid, the huge gamers, they have the gaming companies, the people that do Roblox and Minecraft and all these things, they give blanket licenses to those guys. They do it because it's PewDiePie, all these people. They give blanket licenses to the biggest people. Because that's incredible promotion for these games. I mean, massive promotion. My channel is tiny compared to that. You guys are helping make it bigger here. This is great. But it's free promotion. Why is it that the gaming community realizes it, but the stupid music business doesn't realize this? It's so dumb. That's why the gaming industry is the biggest industry out there now. These people are so much smarter. It's amazing. It's not like it's not like the guys that run the record business are any younger than run these gaming companies. I mean, it's so stupid. It's so stupid. and they have no vision at all. So here I am out there doing a service to them by trying to sell back catalog, by telling people about these records that they should know about, that are historical records, okay? Jazz is told through the history of jazz recordings. Classical music is taught through the history of classical recordings and through the actual live music, okay? So anyways, the music industry got it wrong all the time. Why is there not the thievery in the movie business? Because MP3s were smaller. They were way easier to steal than movies. You didn't have the bandwidth to steal whole movies, and the people in the motion picture companies said, we're not going to do what they did. These people are idiots. These people running these record labels are complete idiots. We're not going to get caught in that, and they didn't for the most part. They got their, they knew how to stream. They got into Netflix. They got into streaming. They sold DVDs, all this stuff. They put extra material on it. They did everything right, everything they could. You're still not going to keep things from getting stolen, but, they did everything that they could, and they saved their industry, and it's much more profitable. The music business will never come back from what it was. That does not mean that you can't make a living if you're a gifted artist, okay? So I'm not sitting here telling people that you can't make a living in music, because that's false. It is false. So somebody keeps asking me about this Hanson's record. Yes. What do I think about the sound? Yeah, it's a good sounding record. I haven't listened to it in a long time, though. You can always make a living teaching music. You can. Okay, so that is my music business 101 rant, and about kind of I wanted to give you more background on what's going on behind this thing. People are always asking me, why am I not doing more things with film scores? And I'll tell you why. And I've said this because I did a thing. Warner Brothers is really no better than UMG, okay, Universal Music Group. I've had things taken off by Warner. I've wanted to do a Danny Elfman video and talk about the Batman soundtrack, the early ones, right? But that's Warner Brothers. I'm not going to do that. I had a John Williams. Some of the John Williams ones were fine when my channel was smaller. I did a John Williams. I did I did a Superman, one of the cues from the Superman movie, which I had the orchestral reduction. Okay, it was on an 8-stave along with percussion, and I showed how to write an orchestral sketch, and the video got taken down instantly. I spent a lot of time on it too. So I ended up putting it on my Vimeo channel and had a link to it, but I really didn't have anywhere to put a link to it. This is 6-8 months ago. So what I did is I recreated the thing using the library, music libraries I have. I recreated it and I put the video out. It's out now, but it's with me recreating John Williams' thing from scratch, all the parts. And it's a pain in the butt. I mean, it's incredibly time consuming. So that's one of the reasons that I don't do it all the time, is because I don't want to work for 15 hours on a video to have it take down in 2 seconds. So you got what is this, Georgie? Is it Jorge? I can't read that. You got a strike for your YouTube gaming channel for playing your band's own music. I got dinged for my tune Carolina that I co-wrote with Parmalee. I played the demo version of the song that I did that's a half step higher, and they dinged me for copyright infringement on my own tune. What are you going to do? I wrote this, I did this tune with this DJ, Tidy, his name is. He's an Australian DJ. I did this EDM track that I co-wrote with him. And I put that at the end of my video on using compression. And they dinged me for that. He owns that. It's his company. I didn't even bother calling him about it. But, what are you going to do? I mean, I co-wrote the tune with him, and I got it demonetized when it's my song. Anyways, all right, you guys are great. Comment here. My Beato book on sale, $10 off for 24 hours. Mega bundle, $10 off for 24 hours. Modes of the major scale. I've never done a discount. 25% off with a code MM251. I'm going to announce on Monday my seminar that's coming up in New York City on November 7th. I'm doing 3 seminars. Who lives in New York City? Anybody here? Anybody here live in New York City? They're going to come to see me there. Let me know. MM251. I used capital M's. I don't know if it matters. Try capital M's. New York here. You might try. Ryan, come on. Anyways, just kidding. You guys are great. Don't forget, thumbs up. There's only 530 and there's 550 of you on there. Thumbs up, leave a comment. Tell me what you want me to make videos on. You guys are great. I'll talk to you later. Bye.